Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Are negative Google reviews hurting your business? Don't let unfair feedback cost you customers. At Webamax, we specialize in removing false, misleading, and damaging reviews so your online reputation stays strong. Our expert team works quickly and legally to clean up your digital presence, helping you rebuild trust. Visit us on the web at www.gowebamax.com. That's GOWEBIMAX.com, or text us for a free quote at 856-840-8343. Don't let bad reviews define you. Get immediate help from Webamax.
Welcome back to the Skating Penguin Network, everyone. It is Robbie, as always, here with Snail on the other side of the country. It is the evening, or at least the evening on the East Coast, entering the evening on the East Coast on Monday, February 3rd. The Penguins are off again today. They were on the ice getting ready for New Jersey on Tuesday night before wrapping up with 2 road games before the Four Nations face-off. So we are back. No recap right now, but we will have a mailbag. We have 8 questions from Brian. But before we jump into that, I'll toss it over to Snail and see how things are out in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, all's good out here. We actually got our first snow in over a year. We didn't get any snow last year, but a little bit of lowland snow for us out here, and it's all starting to melt already. But just cozy watching hockey games last night, and not a whole lot going today. But we got a bunch of questions from Brian, Robbie.
We do, but before we get into the questions, one thing I do want to hit on, we've been all of us have kind of been lobbying for it. Rickard Rakell is headed to the Four Nations face-off, finally getting his due. He replaces Yes, he replaces the injured William Karlsson of the Vegas Golden Knights. So Rakell was named as the replacement there. So the Penguins' leading goal scorer will head to the tournament as a part of Team Sweden. Should have been on the original roster, but he did find a way to squeak on. Well-deserved for Rakell. I think the season he's putting together definitely earned the right to wear the 3 Kroner uniform, the blue and yellow. So very happy for him.
Well, yeah, good for him. And I was going to ask, do you think that Rakell gets the snub in a case like this because of his not only because of his down year last year, but is it because William Karlsson plays center?
I definitely think center is such a valuable position. Rakell probably again. The Sweden is a good hockey team. I think that when they named 4 guys, I think this summer for each of the 4 teams, Mika Zibanejad being on that, and I understand Mika's had some pretty decent years leading into this, but looking at what's going on this year, I just feel like that was. I mean, it's just a very bizarre. You would never do that for the Olympics or anything like that. I understand they wanted to pump up some excitement for it heading in or through summer, but it just felt like Mika was kind of an odd choice there when, obviously Karlsson seems fine. There's a lot of talent there, but Mika felt weird, and it felt like Mika was what was kind of holding him. He should have been on there based on what we've seen this year. But, I mean, he came off a bad year. Last year, but he was hurt, and this year he's clearly healthy and playing well. So can't blame them for finally picking him and giving him a chance to shine on an international stage.
Well, yeah, I'm actually looking. Rickard Rakell, last year he had 15 goals, 22 assists for 37 points. He played in 70 games. Will Karlsson played in the same amount of games, and he was 30 and 30 for 60 points. I didn't know he had such a strong season last year.
Yeah.
And then Rickard Rakell's played in roughly 15 more games than Will Carlson this year, and Wild Bill's got 7 goals, 11 assists for 18 points, where Ricard Raquel sitting at before they play the New Jersey Devils. He's got 23 goals and 22 assists for 45 points. So, yeah, pretty big discrepancy last year and this year. But you'd have to think that they give the nudge to a guy like Will Carlson because of his his ability to play. Any center can play wing. But yeah, this year, I'm happy. I did not know that. So good for Ricard Raquel. I'm sure that the powers that be that picked these teams were just watching the way that he had, like, the season he's been having, and been like, of course this happens. Like,
Yeah.
I thought it was weird that they had to pick the team so far in advance. Like,
I mean, we've known about these teams for, it feels like, months now.
Well, I think it has been months, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's way earlier than they would have picked even for like the Olympics. The Olympics, they would have been picking like closer to New Year's, and these teams are picked much more in advance than that. So, it definitely felt like, again, maybe it was just trying to generate some hype. That way, like, teams could promote their players as they'll be participating in the Four Nations, and it just kind of gummed up the system and maybe left some guys off that deserved a shot. But Raquel will get his.
He will. That'll be exciting. So a third Penguin being represented at the Four Nations face-off. He's joining Erik Karlsson and Captain Sidney Crosby. Robbie, I forgot to send it back over to you. How rude of me. How are things out in Western PA right now?
Actually pretty warm today. It was about 55 degrees here, but that was coming on the heels of it basically raining ice last night. It was definitely, it was dicey if you had to step outside, but the temperatures heated up today, everything melted, and it was overall a really nice day. Definitely a springish weather type day, but I do believe it's going to dip down again, but it doesn't look like any major snow makers are in the offing, at least in the near future.
Well, I saw Puxatawny was pulled out of his hole, as he is every year. And I saw that it will be another 6 weeks of winter if you go by the Puxatawny, weather system.
Yes.
Is that in Pennsylvania? That
Puxatawny? It's about it's probably about 2 hours from where I am. All back roads too. There's no like easy way to get to it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere.
Is that a pretty uniquely Pennsylvania thing to pull the groundhog out of a hole?
Yeah.
Aren't there multiple groundhogs? I've heard that there's multiple.
I mean, there have been because they die off.
No, I meant like in different parts of different
I do
areas.
believe there's other places that try to do it, but Punxsutawney is like the one that, like, it ends up on TV every year, and the one that's definitely more celebrated. That's for sure.
Have you ever gone to see it?
I've not. They cram like 60,000 people into a town of like a handful, and it's Is it like
a small rural central
it's
PA?
It's very small and rural. It has like one street, maybe like 2 or 3 stoplights, and they do not have the hotel infrastructure to handle that many people. So you have people like renting out rooms in their houses, people sleeping in cars. Yeah, it's a.
Are people getting gooned up at these things? Like, are people drinking and stuff?
Absolutely.
Oh my God, you'd have to that.
Yeah,
if
you got
it's a small
early.
town of like a handful, and like they've got like 60,000 people showing up. That's got to be like, you'd think that they'd start maybe catering to this whole event. Like building like Punxsutawney Hotel and like the Punxsutawney pool.
Punxsutawney's population as of 2023 is 5,613. Wow. I believe they said there was 50 to 60,000 people there yesterday. So you're over 10 times the population showing up in Punxsutawney. Yes, it is.
That's actually insane.
Yeah,
what a weird like American thing.
Yeah, I guess. I guess it's just one of those things that always, you do it once, and then it just kind of, you keep doing it, and it just becomes. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll buckle down for 6 more weeks of winter, but I feel like in this day and age, I feel like Punxsutawney doesn't really understand global warming effects and all of that's going on outside of his tiny little hole, and the town of Punxsutawney for that matter. So we'll bear down, and in the meantime, we got some questions to get to. All from Brian. Thank you again, Brian, for providing us with some stuff to chew on. Couple hard hitting questions as usual from him, and some fun ones. So I'm going to kick this off, Robbie, and you're going to get the first one here. And we were just talking about the man, Ricard Raquel, and this question is regarding him. Simply, would you sell high on Ricard Raquel as of right now? Meaning, would you trade him for a haul?
It would have to be a haul. Term left, having a great season, and seems to work very well with Sidney Crosby. So if somebody would come to me and give me something I couldn't refuse, then yeah, I would not be shy about trading him, and that would mean no retention on that deal. I'd have to do a clean, get off the books kind of thing. But from my understanding, Josh Yohe had kind of like a tier list out today, and from what he's hearing, the Penguins want to keep Ricard Raquel. It's a never say never situation, but unless somebody blows him away, it sounds like Ricard Raquel will remain in Pittsburgh just because they do see him kind of as a piece that can be a part of another contender if they build other ways. But again, if somebody shows up with a blockbuster deal, a home run deal that's good for the Penguins, never say never. And in my eyes, that's kind of where I'm at. If he was on an expiring deal, a completely different story. But you have term left, the salary cap's going up, and if he's clearly healthy and he's showing you what he can do when he's healthy, plays well with Crosby, good assist numbers for a guy that generally thought of as a pure goal scorer. So in my opinion, I'm holding on to Raquel for the time being, just because I think he can be a guy that contributes to a team that does make the playoffs again in the Crosby era. All right.
Yeah, I like that. I wanted to chime in on this as well,
Yeah, go ahead.
because I think right now a haul for Ricard Raquel would either be, I mean, I think a team would want to make a hockey trade. They'd want to find a 1-for-1.
Yeah.
But Ricard Raquel's only making $5 million, and if he's producing like this, like he has, if last season's an outlier, and you've got Ricard Raquel under contract until I believe the 27-28 season,
I believe so. Yeah.
if not that, the year before. That's a few more years, $5 million. And if he's if he's a goal scorer for you, and he can score in a lot of different ways, he's not just standing in one spot like Ovi or Stamkos. He can play down low. He can be right there on the back door on the crease. He definitely has a wicked release, and he can shoot from the dot. I would see Ricard Raquel. What do you think? Like, would you do it for a good young player? Let's see. Let's say you get a first round pick, a roster ready player, and then a prospect. Would that make you move off of Raquel?
That would definitely be, I think, the starting point of discussions, because again, you're getting a guy that's going to score 30 plus goals on at a very team friendly price, on a deal that has term. I think that's where you're starting. If somebody wants to match that, then we can talk. But if they're not willing to go that far, Raquel remains in Pittsburgh until whenever.
I agree. I don't think that they're under any urgency to trade him. I know that everyone else in the media world is like literally have seen I think it was like Sports Illustrated maybe, or Sportsnet maybe. They literally 2 days ago put out a article saying that the Penguins must trade Ricard Raquel.
Yeah, no.
Anyways, all right, moving on.
All right. Question number 2 here. If Rantanen pulls a Jake and doesn't sign with the Canes in free agency, should the Penguins make a hard push for him? I think you have to try, but the more likely guy Dubas should go after is Mitch Marner.
Well, we'll get to the Mitch Marner. We can touch on that in a moment. But, I think that signing Rantanen would be a sweet deal. I think that him and Sid would work phenomenally. I don't
Yeah.
think there's many decent centers that wouldn't work well with a guy like Rantanen. A true power forward, he'll get you 100 points, 50 goals just in his sleep.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I'm going to say, it's absolutely not going to happen, even as much as I would be a fan of it. It's not going to happen because there are teams that are far more desperate than the Penguins
Yeah.
for his services. You look at teams that kind of see their win. I mean, Colorado might be one of those teams that is trying to re-sign him back if they can, if things aren't too,
Mm-hmm.
if the relationship isn't already completely soured. I mean, Colorado might be willing to put up a decent amount to get him back. But I mean,
I
think
think
about
someone's going to
Chicago. They
spend.
have.
Yeah, someone's going to spend a lot of money.
You think Chicago might put their hand up and say Bedard needs a certain, because Chicago was in on Gensel last year. I could see them being in on Rantanen just as much, if not more, saying we need to get a guy that can get us some goals and beyond. He's going to be Bedard's winger for the foreseeable future. Um, yeah, the Penguins, Dallas might be a team that's like, they're good right now. Their window is currently open. That's a piece that might put them over the top. Wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
surprised if Tampa Bay's in the mix too. They got Gensel. With that Julian Breezewa down there? Like, you're telling me that guy's not going to try to? He'll move out a veteran with
Oh yeah.
some. They're ruthless. Vegas. Speaking of Vegas, like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, Vegas. They might
Who
find.
knows
They
what
might.
Vegas will do?
They could kick a team favorite off for a Rantanen type move.
I
I don't
could
know.
see a
There's
team
like,
like Boston trying to
for sure, Boston.
snag
They'll
in
probably
someone like
sniff.
that. I think every team's gonna at least make an inquiry on a guy like Rantanen. Um, if it depends on how much winning right away means for him, that would maybe take out Chicago and like a San Jose or something like that. I think that Nashville is going to be aggressive again. So I think you could see a whole bunch of suitors
God,
coming his way,
Nashville.
but I think someone's going to pay just mega bucks, especially with the way the cap's going, that they won't have a problem throwing mega millions at him for. I think the max is like 7 years, so let's say like 6 years to a guy like Rantanen.
And I mean, he's in Carolina right now, and I think he said he was shocked that he went there. But I mean, he's playing with one of his best friends, in Sebastian Aho, and
Mm-hmm.
Carolina right now is the only team that's able to give him an eighth year. If he's
Yep.
looking for a certain amount he wants at the end of this contract, Carolina isn't known as like a big game. I mean, they're big game hunters at the deadline and every once in a while, but they don't spend a ton of money. And this might be their winger for Aho for the future. If they really
Yeah.
wanted to solidify themselves again as another contender year after year,
Yep.
they could be making sweet, sweet music for a long time. So, I mean, like you said, everybody's is gonna kick tires and kind of see what the actual asking price is, and I'm sure it's going to be astronomical. But the Penguins aren't that desperate for that kind of player, as
No.
cool as it would be. Now, just to entertain Brian's question a little further, he mentions a guy like Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner is somebody that I am typically pretty down on. I think for a lot of reasons that have nothing to do with the points he puts up. I've been pretty vocal. I hate a lot of stuff about him. Just his like demeanor, his I don't know, sometimes even his aloofness and goofiness on the ice, just or when they're I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that he does that has
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with scoring goals that just bugs the hell out of me. Where would you be, Robbie, on the Penguins and Dubas entertaining a Marner, because he's a UFA. He's betting on himself this season,
Yeah.
and if he
Yeah.
has a bad performance in the playoffs again, Marner's a guy that'll get you to the playoffs, not necessarily through the playoffs. Where are you at with kicking tires on a guy like Mitch Marner?
Yeah, we know Dubas likes his old guys. That's why Michael Bunting's in Pittsburgh right now. Um, I could see, depending on what Marner does in the playoffs, like you said, is going to greatly affect his value. If he lays another egg, could get him for much cheaper than what he's actually worth. But in regular season production has to mean something. So I could see him still being worth outside of what the Penguins are willing to pay. But I think of the two guys mentioned in this question, I think Marner is definitely someone Dubas is going to poke around at, assuming he makes it to free agency come July 1st.
And I mean, Robbie, like we saw the Rantanen deal, and
Yeah.
the Maple Leafs, they're trying so hard to shake this curse or whatever. They're trying to win around for they've had Matthews, Marner, and Nylander for I think 9 years now. They've won one round, and Tree Living is determined to make some changes up there. Of course, it's all got to be okay with Brendan Shanahan and the powers that be at MLSE, but I think that they're really trying to shake things up. We see Rantanen get traded. They just said that, no, we can't come to an agreement on a price right now. We can't risk letting him walk. Do you think there's more of a chance because of the salary cap going up, because of just where the NHL is at? We're seeing blockbuster trades. Hell, in the NBA, Luka Doncic just got traded.
Yeah.
You think that there's a chance that the Toronto Maple Leafs, right before, like closer to the trade deadline, they make a hard push to see if he's at a number he's willing to come in on? And if they can't, then do you think there's a chance they put him on the trade block?
I mean, that's obviously something that could absolutely happen.
But would you say more so maybe this year with how the season's been going?
With the way the season's been going and being on an expiring contract, I could that's definitely more likely this season if they can't get any deal done, which you're not even hearing rumors of that happening. So I definitely think that if it's going to happen, this season's more likely than any, obviously, because he's going to sign a long-term deal somewhere this offseason. So if they're looking to get any value for him, it's going to be now. Though I'd argue, well, even last year on a 1-year deal coming off that playoffs, his value might be higher right now than it was even, let's say, last summer. So I could see them maybe throwing out flyers to see if anybody's interested and trying to get something for him, because especially if they know he's going to walk, or even test the free agent market at all. Yeah. And I think with the way the cap, like I said, we keep talking about the salary cap, and that gets kind of annoying, but you can't really deny where the salary cap's going. I think if you're a pending free agent, if your agent says to sign an extension before July 1st, I think you need to fire your agent.
Good. I like
think
that. Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of money thrown around. Everybody sees the projections. The market value is going to be set again. Connor McDavid is going to be what I would consider a bargain here in 2 years. So yeah, if you're a pending free agent, I think you're testing the market. Unless somebody comes in with a ridiculous contract offer that gives you security and wealth for 8
generations.
Years. Yeah. Unless somebody, I think, the only way you're getting a deal is if you're getting a max deal before free agency. So yeah, no problem with any of these guys testing the market. I think it's a smart thing to do.
All right, I got a question for you, Robbie. This is me chiming in on the mailbag here. Would you do Rickard Rakell, Erik Karlsson for Mitch Marner and a first-round pick?
Mitch, Rakell, Marner. Again, only if you're counting Rakell, only if there's because that pick is not going to be a great pick in a bad draft. Yeah, I'd say you'd have to give me. No, I wouldn't do it. I just think there's Marner has so much to prove this offseason or this postseason that I just don't feel good about that.
All right, Max Domi, Mitch Marner, Rickard Rakell, and Erik Karlsson.
And now you just have money flying everywhere. No, I don't think Domi's really worth that. I mean, I know we've talked about Max Domi being in Pittsburgh or in a Penguins uniform for what feels like a decade now, but I'm still not willing to move off a guy like Rakell for guys that I don't think Domi's as good as. I think Rakell's better than both of those guys. So no, I'm not really willing to move off Rakell right now for that deal.
Yeah, and he's signed too.
Yeah.
Marner, you're going to have to deal with that nonsense once his contract, unless there's a contract, unless they agree on something.
Unless there'd be some kind of agreed to contract that he's going to trade and sign or sign and trade or whatever, something like that.
I could just see at the trade deadline they're not close on contract offers or a contract negotiation, and they need a right shot winger who can score 30 goals and can produce in the playoffs. They might look at Raquel, but anyways, that was just
Yeah.
a little thing that popped into my head. But we can move on from the trade talk because that could take up.
Yeah.
Sheesh, I could talk about that kind of stuff all day. So let's go to another question here from Brian again. And okay, this is a good one. And I might have to text you over this really quickly after I finish reading this, but I might have sent it to you actually. Snail shared with me a proposed third jersey for the 1994-1995 season that was rejected. Curious if he showed you as well, Robbie, and if we like them better than the Gradient Robo Pen that we ultimately got. I do like them, but those Robo Pen jerseys from that season are all time. Did I send it to you on
Yeah,
Instagram, Robbie?
you did send it to me, and
Okay,
this is a jersey I've seen before.
you have.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's floated around as like every once in a while, like those rejected jerseys fly around or rejected prototypes fly around. And yeah, the one. I mean, it was a very '90s jersey, a very '90s thing going on with that jersey. Um, it had blue and black and yellow, and it was kind of just a vomit of different designs and a big penguin head. But what the Penguins had in the '90s, once they went to the Robo Penguin, are definitely classics if you're a Penguins fan. So I don't, I, I never fully hated the Robo Penguin. Again, that's mostly what I grew up with, was the Robo Penguin. So I can't fully hate it. The Gradient is really hit or miss for a lot of people, but in my opinion, no, the Robo Penguin with the Gradient and the white are better than what this was. Though this would have been really fun as a one-off, like specialty uniform. It almost kind of looked like a practice, like a warm-up jersey.
It looks like a roller hockey jersey.
It does. There's just so much going on. Again, there was like you had the Kings jerseys in the '90s that had like it looked like the Burger King. You had those Ducks uniforms with like the duck kicking through an ice wall.
Insane jersey.
Yeah, insane jersey. Like there was just the '90s. It's good that's me and Snail talking right now because like Garrett would be so confused about like what the '90s were. The '90s were a completely just a weird time, a great time, but just a very weird time for like fashion
Oh yeah.
stuff.
If
You had-
anything kind of went in the 90s. People
yeah,
were throwing stuff at the wall, seeing how it went. You had influences coming from like the 70s and the powers that be were from the 70s and the 80s and
yeah,
all that stuff that was going on.
you had
You were getting little
Zubaz.
you were getting little bits of that.
Yeah,
The internet
a
was
lot of
brand new,
colors.
so it was the wild west on the internet, going into like the late 90s even. And
A lot of colors, a lot of designs,
yep.
a lot of shapes. Yeah, as a like you said, a
And
roller
CGI
hockey.
wasn't a
Yeah,
thing yet.
no, it was basically just people going into Microsoft Paint and scribbling stuff down. Like you didn't have the advanced Photoshops or anything like you do now. You didn't have, I mean, AI. Like you didn't even have AI to like mock up a Penguins jersey or something
Oh, you
like
pretty
that.
much had kid pics on the
Yeah,
computer. And
yeah, you're basically using like very, very early technology, and yeah, it definitely. You could see somebody wearing that on a beach, playing roller hockey or
oh
on
yeah,
deck hockey or something like that. It's something that
absolutely.
you would have bought at like a flea market because somebody just like somebody printed them and like they owned like a screen printing shop and printed a bunch of like um, a bunch of just knockoff Penguins jerseys. That's very much what it was. It was very
For sure.
very '90s thing. So from a Penguin standpoint, the Gradients not everybody's favorite, but much better than what this conglomeration was because it was pretty interesting.
I think the Gradient Robo Penguin is better. That one's just so interesting, kind of off the wall. But are, speaking of the Robo Penguin, are the Penguins like moving away from that as kind of like I don't think they weren't rebranding by any means back to the Robo Penguin, but last year didn't they play a couple of games with it, or was that the year prior to that?
Was it last year? I can't. It might have been 2 years ago. They did have so The Robo Penguin, while a lot of us grew up with it, is also connected to a lot of bankruptcy and like bad moments in Penguins history. It's what they wore when they lost in '93. It's what they wore when they lost to the Panthers in the
That's right.
Eastern Conference Final. It's very tied into the team moving and always questions about whether or not they're going to remain in Pittsburgh. So for a lot of us, that we grew up with it, but it's still tied to those memories. So we've kind of like, okay, you want to wear it as like a 1 or 2 off. That's fine. It's just funny that like the first year they brought it back, it would have been 2 years ago, was when the playoff streak ended. So yeah,
You're right.
they definitely
Guy can't wear
maybe
nothing in Pittsburgh. Can't wear those blue jerseys because Sid got the conky. Can't wear the Robo Peng because it means that the Penguins are doomed for eternity if they wear those. God, maybe they should give that 94-95 alternate jersey a go and just see what luck
to
that
see what
brings.
happens. Yeah,
just see what
I
happens.
mean, if they showed up wearing that, that would be. I mean, as a one-off, it would be really
the
funny.
internet would have a fit with that.
Yeah, it would be heavily scrutinized. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah, Don Cherry might like it though.
Yeah. All right. How are we feeling about the trade with Vancouver? Obviously, the big part is the first. Should we hope for it to come in this year's draft or want it to come in 2026 when it's unprotected?
Obviously, I would say probably in 20. Like if I'm a gambling man, I think that the Rangers are going to get a nice little bump from this Miller trade. And they're not a playoff team right now, but God, they've got Shesterkin. Jonathan Quick just won his like 400th game or something the other night. They've got 2 Pittsburghers in up the middle ice with Trocheck and Miller. They're just pieces of shit to play against. I don't know. I think that the Rangers could make like. I don't know are they top 13 bad though? I don't know. I would say next year because I don't believe that the Rangers. God, they might be a team that puts their hands up for Mikko Rantanen too.
Yeah.
If they could get rid of that Zibanejad, if they got rid of that Zibanejad, he has to go in New York. But that's a chat for another day. But I would say next year for that 2026 pick because I don't know. Their team all of a sudden is very old. Like if you think about it, they tanked for like 2 seasons. They got Capo Caco and Lafreniere. Capo Caco is now not even on that team anymore. Philip Hedl was also one of those picks that they needed, that they used. It was one of their big prospects. He's gone. Alexis Lafreniere is a winger, and a winger can only you need to be fed the puck to be a successful winger unless he can somehow mold his game to play center, but he's not a centerman. I don't trust what New York's got going on. I think they got old really quickly all of a sudden, and their window went from kind of like starting to become open to now they're like they need to make moves quick or it's going to fall apart in front of them. And I would say I would put all my chips in next season. What about you, Robbie?
Yeah, I think I read a quote about it today. Basically, if the Rangers miss the playoffs this year, there's a chance that they don't rebuild enough to make it next year. And if the Penguins aren't quite ready to return to the playoffs, that gives you 2 lottery balls in the mix for Gavin McKenna. So 26, 26 definitely is probably the better bet. And the draft overall is a little bit deeper.
Could you imagine if they have 2 lottery balls for Gavin McKenna and the Penguins get him?
Could you imagine if they get 1, 2?
If they got 1 and 2, I don't know. There'd be like investigations.
There would have been. Gary Bettman, they pull out the cards and like the second or the first overall, it's like down to like a
Canadian team.
The Rangers, the Penguins, and let's say Calgary. And they pull out and it's like the third overall team is the Calgary Flames. And it comes down like the Penguins at that point the Penguins would be guaranteed to be the 1 pick because they would, if they had the Rangers pick, that would just be, oh man, that would send people into an absolute. I mean, they might storm the NHL offices of New York City.
Paul Jeanette might string Gary Bettman up by his hindquarters for that.
Yeah, that would be very. I mean, yeah, it would be very funny if that happened.
Well, you remember when the Penguins got bounced, and they had pretty good odds for Alexis Lafreniere. Do you remember the people saying, "Oh wow, watch the Penguins get the first overall
Mm-hmm.
pick somehow this year"? He played for Rimouski. People were like, "Oh, trying to like connect dots." It would be
Yeah.
interesting, but geez, yeah, I'm all for 2026, but we'll have to
Yeah.
see what happens. Yeah, dude, it's crazy. I was just gonna say we have like 30 games left, but we have less than that. The season is like just dwindling away. We
Yeah.
pretty much
Very
have
quick.
what, like, how quickly did we get through 30 games? If you remember back to October,
Oh man. Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
yeah.
it,
Felt like we
it's
just flew through. We've been flying through this season, and we're down to 28 games left now. It's just, yeah, it's gonna go quick.
it will, and we will be here to cover all of that. So let's go to a question, Robbie. I think you're probably better posed than me to answer this question. I think this might be right up your alley, and that is a question regarding Gary Bettman, who we just talked about. Um, Bettman is believed to be retiring in a couple of years. Do you got anyone on your radar who you think might be his successor?
I think it's gonna be somebody you never heard of. To be
That's kind of
honest,
what I thought too.
I really think it's gonna be somebody that's obviously involved in hockey, but in a fashion that's not public facing. Um, I think it's going to be a guy that the owners obviously like. They're the ones that install him, but it's going to be somebody you don't know right now. It's not going to be like a Colin Campbell or anybody that you see um, working um, in a public facing role. I'd say I
You don't think
definitely think
it's
it.
Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly?
No, that doesn't seem to be what they generally go with. It's more or less. It seems like these guys are pulled out of kind of obscurity. I wouldn't say obscurity. They're known, but known to certain people. I think it's going to be somebody that um, that you're not familiar with, but the owners are all familiar with. Somebody that works with them in the front offices. But I've heard no real names of who could replace him. So I just think it's going to be somebody to at least the everyday fan is probably not familiar with. I mean, uh, could be wrong on that, but that's just how I feel because I feel like every commissioner that's changed during my lifetime in the other sports is somebody I um, uh, never heard of before. And Gary Bettman, I was really too young to remember his transition into the commissioner role. But generally, commissioners, it's probably best if you don't know the commissioner's name.
Yeah, that's a good
But
point.
anymore, they're so public facing that it's hard not to. But I think it's going to be somebody that you really don't know.
Good point. I mean, who knew who Gary Bettman was probably
Yeah,
before he stepped in?
yeah, yeah. Outside of the people really in the know, probably nobody. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Brian says, "Am I the only one that's excited to see who else gets moved and what the return will be? It seems like Dubas rarely loses a trade."
Well, he's done pretty good trade wise, but the jury's still out on whether he wins his negotiations
Yeah,
with players for contracts, but that's not what he asked. I would have to say that I agree. I'm just so excited for movement. I think with the cap, they came out and showed the cap going up for the next 3 years, which I thought was crazy for the NHL to do because they've never done that
no,
historically.
not that
Well,
far
they've
ahead.
never been able to bank on anything. Every few years it seems like there's you know rumors of what do they call it? Like when the
A
season
lockout.
a lockout. Like
Yeah,
how have they been able to bank on it? But I think with you know kudos to Gary Bettman and the TV deals that have been signed and the expansion drafts. The league has never been healthier, I don't think, in the entirety of the NHL's history. Would you agree with that, Robbie?
yeah. The league is incredibly healthy right now. A big recovery from the COVID years. Um, And again, you're seeing it across sports in general. It's not just
Hmm.
the NHL, but the NHL obviously being more of a niche sport. The numbers you're seeing have been very impressive, very yeah, just good. Just a healthy league right now. You have more talent in the league than you've ever had. You have good rights deals with ESPN and TNT. yeah, you have teams now being able to distribute their own product on local stations easier than ever through streaming. So yeah, it's absolutely promising to see these numbers. And yeah, usually you get like a year ahead of time, maybe a guesstimate going forward, but they
Hmm.
seem to be on um, pretty accurate and pretty precise numbers. So it's going to be very interesting. You saw the escrow payments were
Yep.
canceled, straight up just revenue splitting. Obviously, the big hope is they can just straight up avoid a lockout in 26. But you have four nations coming. You have um,
Olympics, which isn't
Olympics and
NHL, but
no, but I mean, you're going to have NHL faces there, and then you're going to have hopefully a World Cup of hockey in
28.
28, hopefully. So, yeah, a lot of health in the game right now, especially in the NHL. So, yeah, just it's really good to see that going. But as for trades, I think with these caps going up, you're going to see big names moved and big contracts moved because teams will
Hmm.
have more breathing space. So it'll be very, very interesting to watch who gets moved when. I think you'll see a lot of movement in the offseason, more so than the trade deadline. You'll see your rentals as always, but mega contracts getting moved, that's probably going to be an offseason thing. So once the season
Yeah.
wraps up, between like the day the Stanley Cup's raised and the draft or even free agency, I think you could see a lot of big names moved for good returns.
Yeah, which hasn't been the case for a long time. Like, it's everyone's been so strapped by the cap and no one can budge on contracts because no one can take on money. And
Yeah.
we're finally going to probably get to a point over the next few years. It might be really interesting. Like, you can shake up the land if you're still going to have to be careful with your cap situation.
Oh yeah.
But like you're probably going to see teams able to, if they structure their salary cap and everything responsibly. I mean, what trades will be able to happen more frequently and on a whim as opposed to prior years, and I think that's going to make trade deadline. God, what do they call that? Where they just have the all day trade boards going on a couple different networks, and
Yeah,
it's
like a big board, kind of like it just names flying everywhere,
all
uh,
day trades
all day.
happening,
Yeah.
and you're getting, Elliot Friedman's going to have. I mean, it's going to be exciting, I think, because we love trades, like
Yep.
especially, and pertaining to the Penguins specifically, they're in kind of such an interesting place as far as. Where their team is at. They're in the midst of a retooling right now. They've still got Sid and everybody, but they're trying to get younger. I think that Dubas is, and he's got so many picks. I think there's another question in here from Brian talking about just the cupboards of picks that Dubas has stocked. I mean, yeah, you could use all those on people that you're drafting, but that's that's currency to trade players. I think it's going to be super interesting for the Penguins over the next couple of years. I don't think there's going to be players that they're going to Dubas is going to be sniffing around on just about everything.
Yep.
So yeah, it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be entertaining, and it's going to be also fun because I think the Penguins are going to probably get a point where they're just trying to get better and they're trying to shake up their roster. So I'm here for it, and I think Robbie, you'd have to
Oh,
agree,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. Would agree.
All right. With that, we'll move on to let's go to this question then, kind of regarding the picks. Brian says here, I think as it stands now that the Penguins currently have 29 or 30 draft picks over the next 3 years, the most in the NHL. It's nice to see Dubas execute the plan he sought out instead of having one in his head. We won't mention maybe who that quote is from. Um, Having those draft picks as leverage in possible trades is going to be huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Penguins aren't going to use all 30 of those draft picks themselves, and they're still going to get more too. So we don't. Again, there's still pieces on this team alone that I think could bring or going to bring pick as returns that we'll see move before March 7th. But yeah, we're going to see Kyle Dubas use some of those picks for leverage um, to get pieces in. I think again, 30 picks, that's a lot. You're not going to keep all those picks. There's going to be pieces that get moved, And just stocking those picks is valuable just for that reason, just to be able to make moves. And if you don't make a move, you can use that pick to get us to rebuild the system. It's not the end of the world if you don't trade the pick. You don't have to trade the pick because you feel like you have to trade the pick. The picks are either for trade or for using. So I think overall, he has a plan at least to rebuild the system and rebuild the team. It's just going to be about hitting on free agent signings and using those picks to his advantage one way or another. And the drafting has been, I'd say, pretty good so far. He's built out his team, his scout department, his front office more and more as it's gone along here since he joined the Penguins. So fingers crossed that those picks can be used one way or another, and hope it's done in a smart and a good way that helps the team rebuild and get back into contention.
For sure.
All right, our last question here for this evening. Robbie keeps saying he thinks Sergei Mershov is a starter next season, but do we really want that to happen? Goalie is such a volatile position, and him only being 20 has me wanting to be cautious with him.
He's the starting goalie next year. I don't need any more confirmation on how good this guy is. It's just he's dominated everywhere he's gone. And Brian, the reason I say this is because you said it in your own question. The goaltender position is a volatile position. Like, it's hard to put. Vasilevsky's not looking like Vasilevsky. Hellebuck seems to be the only guy that seems to be consistent in the regular season, year in, year out. He's yet to prove it in the playoffs. That team as a whole has yet to prove it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I just think if you got him at 20 and he's already dominating, just why not? I mean, Fleury was the first overall pick. And there were many different times in his tenure in the Pittsburgh jersey that he lost his starting position. I mean, Thomas Vokoun took his job at one point.
Brent Johnson took his job at one point.
Brent Johnson took his spot, his crease at one point. Him and Matt Murray were splitting starts like in the postseason on Stanley Cup runs, and he was a first overall pick, can't miss goalie prospect. He's a Hall of Famer. He's still playing meaningful games. He's still shutting out teams. It just goes to show that. For that reason, I don't think you need to necessarily keep him in the minors if he's dominating because you're afraid that it could be a fluke. Like, I think you got to get him up and you got to get him conditioned for the NHL. If he's ready for the NHL, if he's showing you he's ready for the NHL, get him up there. I don't think that they should bring him up this year. I'm fine with burning this year and just letting him marinate down there. But God forbid at some point he might force his way. If he's just getting, I need to pull it up. I don't know if you have it pulled up or not, Robbie, but Sergei Mershov, I read an incredible stat line of his. And let me see if I can pull it up quickly, but it was like in the ECHL, basically he couldn't lose and he wasn't giving up any goals.
Yeah. I don't know if he lost. I think he might have lost one game in the AHL now, but he's just everywhere he goes.
4-0. The last time I saw, he was 4-0 in the AHL.
Yeah,
he had a shutout already
wherever they drop him.
Yeah, he had already one shutout in the AHL, and in the KHL, I think he was like 3-1 he had a crazy stat line there too. The KHL, which is considered a higher league, I believe. I actually just saw this, that the KHL is considered a higher league than the AHL. And he's got winning records everywhere he goes. He just doesn't give up goals. I'm starting to kind of believe, without even seeing it with my own eyes yet, that all this, it's been a pet peeve of mine when scouts compare prospects to, like, they always say, oh, he plays like Datsuk. Oh, he plays like Victor Hedman. I'm like, really? Like, he plays like an absolute superstar in the NHL. It's hard for me to believe that. I get what they're saying. He has these, maybe the skill sets or similar prospect, like, kind of comparison to these great players. But I'm starting to believe all this talk that he might be the most talented goaltender from that the Penguins have had in a while, from a talent perspective, like a Vasilevsky, like a Shesterkin. Mm-hmm. The talent was there. And then, you see where they're at now. So I think it's about time the Penguins Ron Hextall of all people took a flyer on this Russian goaltender. Seems that Russia is just the goalie factory right now.
Yeah. Yep.
I am all for getting him up here whenever Dubas sees fit because he just dominates. Robbie, I know you got some things to chime in on Murashov. You've been high on him for a long time.
Yeah, you know I'm a big Murashov fan. Love what and like it's vindicating that he just came over and decided to be arguably the best goalie in the system. In like 6 months' time. He came over for the prospects camp, and in July was really impressive there. Everybody had high marks there. Didn't know if he was actually going to come to North America after that, but a few weeks later, they get a deal signed. He comes, and yeah, he's just been a great goaltender since he came over. He has asserted himself at every level. He put 13 games or something in a row in the ECHL at one point. An ECHL All-Star that he might not even get to participate in because they had to move him up because of everything that had gone on. Philip Larson got hurt kind of at the same time. Tristan Jarry was sent or waived, and Joel Blomqvist was called to the NHL. But now when Larson's healthy, I mean, like you're gonna if you send him back to ECHL, it's gonna be like you're putting out a 15-year-old to play against like six-year-olds.
It'd be like putting Ichiro in AAA.
Yeah, it would be basically unfair. It feels like, but yeah, I'm still holding out that he's going to be the starter next year, or at least to start the season. Will we see him this year in the NHL? I don't think so. I think they seem to be dead set on Nedeljkovic getting every start.
Dude,
so
for real, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story with Blomqvist. But he has actually played pretty good since Jarry went down. 2 wins now and a shutout. So like I can't be too mad about it. But back to back this weekend, we'll see at least one of those guys. We'll see both those guys at least at some point. But not Murashov, and with the break coming up. You're going to keep him in the AHL just to get him as many reps as possible anyway. And maybe keep him in the minors throughout this year, injuries aside, and just let him continue to play down there and then see where things progress through the summer and into training camp and be with it there. But I'm a big Murashov fan. Very excited to see where it goes moving forward.
Well, Robbie, I got to say, like, you don't want an Askarov situation with this guy because if Murashov, if he's reading his own stats, because I'm going to read these off to you here in a second. I found the page that I was telling you about, but if he's just dominating at every level and he gets even a little bit persnickety and wants, he wants his NHL time, but the Penguins keep saying, we got to keep you down. Like we're going to let you marinate a little bit. You don't want this guy getting unhappy with your organization and asking for a trade, because after I read these stats off, I think a lot of teams would put their hands up for a goalie like this, prospect or not. So in the Russian Junior League, the MHL, he was 24-7-5 with a .948 save percentage. Last season, he was in the KHL. He was 3-1-2 with a .925 save percentage. He makes his pro-American debut in the East Coast Hockey League this year. Goes 15-3-1 with a .919 save percentage. And then he gets bumped up to accompany Tristan Jarry in the American Hockey League with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. And so far, and I think he's played one more game that we're not up to date on. I'm not sure if it's a win or a loss. I think he did play one more game. He's been 4-0 with a .950 save percentage in one shutout. He's 20 years old.
Yeah.
Insane.
It is insane when again, great numbers for any goalie. And then you throw in he's 20 years old and playing North American hockey for the first time ever. Just nuts. And I'm very excited for where he is headed. I mean, the Penguins have to be thrilled. The development seems to be on track. And I'm super pumped about Murashov.
Who would have thought that the Penguins, with Tristan Jarry getting all the goalie news, that they'd be sitting on Blomqvist, who actually hasn't looked that great. I was hoping he was going to be the Penguins savior this season early on in the year, but they've got him, Philip Larson, and Sergei Mershov. Like they've kind of all of a sudden run into a logjam of like goaltending prospects, which I did not have on my bingo card for this season, but here we are with it. And Nedeljkovic is the starter, and Tristan Jarry has not been seen in an NHL uniform for a couple months now. It's just crazy.
Yep, absolutely. All right, that is 8 questions for this week's mailbag. Done. And as for the Penguins, they play Tuesday evening. The New Jersey Devils are in town. It will be the Penguins' final home game before the extended break. They do have a back-to-back set this weekend with the Rangers and Flyers in New York and Philadelphia, respectively, Friday and Saturday. So, yeah, a metropolitan week here for the Penguins. And right after that break as well, they go right back to the metropolitan business coming out of the break. So the rest of the games this month, there's 7 left. They're all Metro games. 3 are against the Flyers, 2 against the Rangers, 1 against the Devils, and 1 against the Capitals. If the Penguins want to do anything in terms of staying in the fight, they're going to have to win these games. And it starts on Tuesday night with Jersey, who has been a thorn in their side. They are the Penguins are 1-6-1 in their last 8 against the Devils, dating back to 2022. So yeah, a very lopsided recent record between the Devils and Penguins. But we will be back to recap that game after the final horn blows. But before I put a bow on this, Snail, do you have anything you want to say?
I mean, I've already given my statement that the Penguin season is dead, but if they have any hopes, it just feels like every week it's like, well, this is the Penguin season right here. If they want to even sniff meaningful games down the stretch closer to the postseason. So, dude, the Penguins record against Metro teams is just it's just god awful, and I'd like to see that script flipped here. I think that these Metro teams, Philly, New York, New Jersey, they need to win. They're going to be somewhat desperate too. It'll be interesting to see who. It's going to be a battle of attrition. Who is the more desperate team? The Penguins have the leadership and the skills to be able to beat these teams, but other teams, sometimes it just seems that youthfulness that they have, or kind of that edge, is what can get the Penguins. But it'll be interesting to see. And we'll have to. Sid's riding a 4-game goal scoring streak too. Just reminder, keep your eye on that. Is he going to will the Penguins through these next few games and be tallying? I hope so. It's going to be fun to watch.
Absolutely, and that starts on Tuesday against the Devils. A nice little break in between there to rest up, but we'll talk more Four Nations as that tournament gets closer. So
maybe even do a Four Nations we'll have a Four Nations pod.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do something. We need something to go that week, and the Penguins are going to be, I'm sure they're going to have some time off to go vacation in whatever locale they wish. So we'll need something to talk about. And I believe there's a roster freeze as well. So
that's what I was going to ask you. Is there a roster freeze?
I don't know. I didn't look it up. I'll have to, but I'm assuming there's going to be something in place that you can't just trade guys during the break. There's usually something around the All-Star break as well.
That's true.
I'm assuming it's going to be something similar to that. So
right on.
For Snail, I am Robbie. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will come to you. We will be back this week with some recaps. But until then, stay safe, stay warm. Go Pens.